What's the best case of instant karma that you've ever seen? Story 1. I worked at a grocery store and I was stocking instant noodles on a big sale display. All I had was a cheap step stool, and you know the one with the bar that runs across the top step? Reaching down to the stool from the shelf I was standing on was about 3 feet. I had a 60% chance that my foot would land on the top bar and collapse the thing. I asked a coworker to use his shoulder as a handle as I got down. Now, my supervisor called me a princess for getting assistance, and soon after he was stocking the 2-liter Coke bottles on his sales display. He tried to get down, and he took the 40% success rate jump onto the step, hit the top bar, and the top ladder collapsed. He broke his arm and then took down half of the display. I just clocked out and left before they told me to clean up the spilled soda all over the place. Story 2. I was driving home on the highway during a horrible blizzard at night. The roads were extremely slick and dangerous, and I was going about 30 miles per hour. My daughter was a newborn, and it was the first time that I had ever driven in the snow with her, and I was nervous. Some jerk in a huge truck is doing 65, passing everyone in the slow lane, and just being really risky and ignorant to the conditions and other drivers in general. He passed me, and I was like, "You're gonna crash, bro." Right at that moment, the dude fishtails, loses control, and crashes into a ditch. Don't worry, I'm not a sadist. He was completely fine. I know this because I saw him emerge from the truck and do a little angry freak-out dance. His truck wasn't fine. That's what you get for endangering others during a blizzard. It's like the universe said, "Oh, you think you're invincible in your mighty truck? Well, let me introduce you to Mr. Icy Ditch." Lesson learned, Mother Nature doesn't play nice with reckless drivers, especially during blizzards. Maybe next time our daring friend will think twice before turning his truck into a winter wonder crash. Story 3. That time I had my shoes stolen. I was 17. I went to a party where there were kids from 2 different high schools, and when I went inside, I took my brand new shoes off that I had just bought for $140. Hours later, when I went to leave, my shoes were gone. We had an idea who took them, a guy from the other school, but we didn't have proof. I was sad and just so embarrassed. I had to drive home in my socks. Long story short, a week later, Monica, the girl who threw the party, shows up at my doorstep holding something behind her back. Turns out that she went to a party and saw the guy who stole my shoes wearing them. When he took them off after a smoke break, she snagged them. Now, standing in front of me, she reveals my Nikes. She told me that the best part was watching him look for them, just like I had, and then leave in his socks. Story 4. In the UK, kids wear blazers and ties to school, and a common bullying tactic that jerks used was to run up to kids, pull their ties so that they get really tightly knotted. On the bus ride home, the bus was really full, and I was standing in front of one such bully. He grabbed my tie just as the bus had to brake sharply. He lost his footing, and the only thing keeping him upright was the fact that he was holding my tie. He had grabbed the wrong bit, the one that wasn't knotted, and it simply untied it and he fell on his bum. That was the last time I was knotted. Story 5. I was working in a supermarket when a panicked customer A came up to me and said that he'd accidentally left his cash in the ATM and had someone handed it in. I was about to say no one when customer B appeared behind him and said that he'd been trying to catch up to him. He'd been queuing behind him at the ATM and saw what happened, so he had got the money for him. It was £200, so a decent amount. Customer A was super grateful and offered him some of the money, but he wouldn't take it. Customer B then bought a scratch card, scratched it, and found out that he'd won £5. Not a whopping amount of karma, but karma nonetheless. It seems like customer B had quite the serendipitous encounter with the universe. Like, talk about being in the right place at the right time. It's like fate whispered in their ear, "Hey, there's a chance to be a real-life superhero and earn some good karma points." And you know what they say, even a scratch card victory is a sweet taste of justice. Do they say that? I'm not sure. From lost cash to a little win, customer B certainly proved that kindness pays off, even if it's just a $5. Story 6. At a job as a mechanic, I got a part that was completely correct, except the electrical plug was a different shape. I found out after I installed that. For the record, it did plug in, just didn't have long enough prongs to communicate. I had to order the right part again and then take this one off and install the right one, all while only getting paid to put the correct one on. Lost about 1.3 hours. My coworker laughed and said, "Bet you won't make that mistake again. Pay attention next time." His very next job, he put in all 4 tires backwards, some tires are directional, and said the same thing to him. I knew I would use it against him, but didn't know it would be that soon. Story 7. My dad told me this story. He was driving back from the store when traffic got really bad, and about a mile ahead there was an accident that brought traffic to a crawl. My dad decides to be patient about it. Others weren't so patient. People began driving on the shoulder in order to get ahead of the traffic. We all know how this goes. We do the right thing and are punished for it. whereas these jerks are skipping in front of traffic and will probably get away with it. He thought about following this stream of cars onto the shoulder, but he decided he'd do the right thing and wait. As he got closer, he saw two cops in a parking lot. One cop was directing all of the shoulder drivers into the parking lot, while the other wrote all of those drivers' tickets. He describes it as one of the most satisfying things he's ever seen. Story 8. Now, one time in middle school, this guy who was relatively new at our school was making fun of a girl in our class who fell in the hallway in between classes. Coincidentally, this was the girl that I had a crush on. He was a little bit of a class clown and was mocking her, making her look stupid and clumsy. And apparently he misjudged his footing, and while attempting to jokingly ape the way that she had fallen, actually fell for real and landed squarely on his back in front of everyone. He broke his arm in the process. Passing him in the hallway, I saw him just lying there, surrounded by adults and staring up at the ceiling, face completely expressionless. He didn't come back to school. I'm pretty sure he had to move after that. I would have too. Oh, the irony. It seems like the universe has quite the sense of humor. Karma can be quite the trickster, can it? And I bet that guy learned a valuable lesson about empathy and the dangers of making fun of others. Talk about a textbook case of what goes around falls down hard. Who would have thought that his own attempt at mockery would have resulted in a broken arm and a swift departure from school? It just goes to show it's best to think twice before trying to be the class clown, especially when it involves imitating someone else's misfortune. Story 9. I've got two. Can't really decide on which one is best. The first one, I'm driving to work during a snowstorm. Pretty much everyone is taking it easy because, snow. Some guy in an Infiniti FX35 thinks that he's invincible, so he comes driving down the road probably 15 miles an hour faster than everyone else. So he goes past me and I don't see him until the next fork in the road. Mr. Superhero went into the turn way too fast and then slammed into an iron fence at the triangle dividing the two streets. He was fine because he ended up outside of the car looking at it with a look of confusion. Now, the second story was driving home one night around 10 p.m. I'm stopped at a red light in front of a shopping mall, about midway down the block. The east and westbound road is separated by a pedestrian island. Someone pulls up next to me at the light, looks around, drives through the red light, and then suddenly, from the opposite side of the street, red and blue lights, a whoop whoop of a siren, and an NYPD SUV hops the island and pulls the guy over. The police weren't camped out or anything, just waiting at the red light on their side of the street. Right place at the right time. Story 10. Not a case of bad karma, luckily. My friend and I were walking out of Walmart when a homeless man asked me for money for food. I don't ever carry cash on me, and I said, "I'm sorry, I don't have any," and I go to walk away. However, I had worked earlier that day and still had an unopened snack in my car. So I walk back to him and say, "Hey, I don't have any money, but I do have some snacks and water in my car that I can give you." And his face lit up. So I walked to my car, grabbed the snacks, and walked back. I handed him the bag. It had a granola bar, 2 bags of chips, some crackers, and 2 water bottles. He thanked me about 20 times, and I told him to have a good day. So I go to my friend's house, and we're just hanging out, and I'm scrolling through a city-wide selling page on Facebook. I had just bought a new king-size bed and didn't have a bed set for it. And I came across this beautiful solid wood frame with built-in drawers that was in perfect condition. The seller had listed it for $100. She was selling it because it didn't fit in her new house. So I have my husband and some friends get a truck, and we go to get it that same day. I gave the lady the $100, and she mentions that I meant to have it posted for $1,000 but mistyped. Since we had already agreed upon the price before I realized it, you can actually have it for $100. And that's how I gave a homeless man food, and then good karma greeted me with a practically new bed set for $100. Story 11. Late to the party here, but since this happens to be all mainly karma to a-holes, I'll share my story. I was in high school walking back from lunch when there was an older gentleman who had crutches in front of me. He couldn't manage to get off the road since the curb was high, and he obviously had leg injuries. All the school kids were walking past him, so I did what I thought any decent person would do and went over to him and gave him a helping hand up onto the pavement so that he would continue on his way. No big deal. And as I walked on, I got flagged down by a woman in a car who had watched the entire incident, and she informed me that she was the head teacher or principal of the neighboring school and had been at a meeting at my school. She phoned up my school and explained the situation to my head teacher. Now, as soon as I got back in for lunch, I was brought in by my head teacher and thanked for giving the school a good name. Apparently, our school doesn't do much good. Got an extra hour for lunch and a certificate at the school awards ceremony. I know it's not as interesting as some of these stories, but every little thing helps, eh? Story 12. Not instant, but who knows how life really works. When I was 18, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma and had to undergo chemo and a few surgeries. Anyways, that Christmas there is a fellow in our town who puts a coin jar, or the thing that the Salvation Army does, in front of stores in his front yard. Every year he raises money this way and donates it to kids with cancer. A kid from our town decides that it's a sweet idea to steal it and then ends up getting caught soon after. The next year, he got diagnosed with cancer, had to do chemo and I think radiation, and ended up on the Steve Wilkos show apparently with his mommy crying about how his sister stole money from them when they were in need. I don't wish that nasty disease on anyone, but if there was one person who kinda deserved it, it was this pile of crap. Story 13. I was the recipient of this instant karma. I worked at this Thai place, and our back door led to the driveway of a house with gross redneck owners whose 4 dogs pooped everywhere. We entered through the back door at the opening, and it sucked in the winter because you'd have to make your way down this sheet of ice. Anyway, my boss was an abusive POS, and one evening we arrived at the same time. He went down the ice hill before me and then slipped, whacked his head hard, and then came to a stop in a fresh pile of dog crap. I didn't even try to hide my laughter. And then I made my way down the ice hill. I also fell pretty hard, in fact, but I didn't whack my head and I didn't land in dog crap, so totally worth it. Talk about a slippery slope of karma. It seems like the universe had a special treat in store for your boss, served with a side of poetic justice. Landing headfirst in a fresh pile of dog poop? Well, that's what we call humbling experience, courtesy of Mother Nature's sense of humor. And while you couldn't resist a good laugh at your boss's expense, karma had a little surprise for you too. A fall in the ice may have left you a bit bruised, but hey, at least you managed to avoid the doggy landmines. It just goes to show that karma has a way of leveling the playing field, even when it's covered in unexpected obstacles. Story 14. I met this guy at the bus stop. He asked for my major, and the minute he learned that I was majoring in visual arts, he started berating me, saying it was a useless major and I was going to end up homeless, etc. I just ignored him and got on the bus. And after a while, it becomes clear that there is a talent scout on the bus as a man is talking loudly on the phone about recent contracts. The guy that I met at the bus stop started pulling out a CD player and insisted that this talent scout listen to his Elton John impression. The talent scout guy was impressed and a bit incredulous. The guy had mixed up his CDs and had listened to an actual Elton John album. I never saw someone slouch back in their chair with so much shame and embarrassment. It made my day. Story 15. Not instant, but good enough. Now, back when we were enemies, my friend bought an airsoft pistol to school. He was showing someone, and another kid who saw him showing the gun reported him in, and he got sent to the correctional facility that the bad kids go to instead of the normal school, and then spent around a month there. He had brought the airsoft gun so he could bully me after school. Now, this one is more instant. The friends and I were at a gas station, and there was a fat guy pumping gas. As we were about to pull out, a friend grabbed a full soda and yelled at the fat guy, "Hey, fatty!" and threw the soda at a weird angle through the sunroof. The soda hit the top of the sunroof and drenched a few of us in the car. This was hilarious to everyone, and I was pretty glad that it happened instead of some poor old fat guy getting drenched. I hope the fat guy had a good laugh as well. Story 16. One time after school, I rode the bus that day because my usual ride wasn't able to pick me up. It was relatively fine though because I rode with a friend. We'll call him Kelvin. And the ride was chill, just talking to Kelvin. My stop comes up and I get ready to leave, saying bye to Kelvin. And as soon as I get off the stop, I start walking towards the same way that the bus was about to go. And as I pass by where Kelvin was sitting, seen through the window, I decided to flip him off because I thought it'd be funny, in good spirits though. However, little did I know, while I was looking at Kelvin to see his reaction, I walked face first into a tree with my hand slamming into my face at the same time. Turns out while I was doing that, he was looking at his phone and happened to only see the part where my dumbass walked into a tree. Pretty sure some people on the bus saw it, like 2 guys who got off on the same stop also saw it. So yeah, he texted me afterwards saying he laughed his ass off, so it wasn't too bad. That's what we call a double dose of instant karma with a side of botanical embarrassment. It's a good thing Calvin missed your intended gesture and instead just witnessed your unfortunate encounter with nature's obstacle course. It makes it a little bit more fun. At least you both got a good laugh out of it though, and hey, it's a memorable moment that will keep the humor alive in your friendship for years to come. But lesson learned, be careful where you direct your comic antics, especially when trees are lurking nearby. Story 17. That time, my dad and I were arguing about something, and when he decided that he won, he smiled smugly while opening a can of crunchy wasabi peas, and I just watched as he popped some into his mouth in victory, and then smiled when he got hit with an intense wasabi taste because he didn't expect them to be wasabi flavored. Yeah, burnt. That other time when I was driving home from babysitting late one night and the guy in the lane next to me blasted through a flashing cross-light crossing whereas I had stopped because, duh, people were walking at night, and the people in the two opposite lanes had stopped as well. The car in one of the opposite lanes that stopped right at the crosswalk was a cop car, and it immediately turned its lights on, did a U-turn to follow the speedster, and as I continued along the road, I saw the cop had pulled the guy over, and he was really annoyed. Story 18. When I was a 14-year-old girl, I was walking down the street, and this guy in a really fancy car, like a convertible, flashy, looked like it cost $1 million, had the top down and was slowly following me down the street. He was yelling lewd things about my breasts, etc., and while I was ignoring him and continuing to walk down the street, well, he got a little frustrated at my non-response, so he started to take off again. Except his head kept following me even as his car got ahead of me, and he failed to notice that the cars in front of him had stopped. He catcalled me all the way into hitting the car in front of him, whose owner jumped out and decked him. So I appreciate how the owner knew how to take care of that situation quickly and decisively. Good on that guy for serving out the instant karma. I don't care how rich you are, because you don't get to act like J.E. and start catcalling teenage girls. You deserve all the karma that is coming your way. In the comments, has anyone witnessed some great instant karma recently?